every year buying books from them. I cut off my association with them. By the way, an interesting point is they still do sell the Pentagon Papers on Amazon. And that's very interesting. The Pentagon Papers have not been declassified. They are not declassified. Just as the Pentagon is saying right now that the Guantanamo Papers cannot be downloaded on a computer by the defense attorneys at Guantanamo because they're classified, even though the lawyers have clearances, but their computers are not cleared for classified information, which is in the New York Times. So they cannot download the New York Times. Literally, this sounds absurd, but that's the way the regulations work. Now, in the case of the Pentagon Papers, they are still regarded as classified, large parts of them. The government printing office actually did declassify a large part of it, but with great deletions, and those deletions are still regarded as classified, and they are available from Amazon. Somebody should bring this to their attention. I wouldn't mind seeing them prosecuted on this point. I observe that they've asked for it.
Oh, good. Thank you for pointing that out. Yes, sir.
Thank you. From a policy standpoint or democracy standpoint, people can't functionally have a democracy without being informed. If the press is unwilling to provide that information, then we need a new media to do that. Under the law, is there any protection for people who feel that it is a patriotic duty to expose information dealing with policy, not technology or information like thermonuclear bombs, but to influence policy that they, or to expose policy they feel is against unpatriotic?
Bob Cole, you want to?
Well, I'm trying to generalize your point. I mean, generally, what you've said is if people want to get information and it's not harmful, is there any limit to it? Basically, no. And that's constitutionally protected activity if you're going to traffic in that kind of information. But I think another way to look at it is to ask yourself, in a functioning democracy, the public has to participate. That was your point. The other side of it is, how much do you want the public's servants to do the public's business for them? And the problem with something like WikiLeaks, which I think we should face. I mean, most of us, I'm probably the only person here old enough to remember this, but during the McCarthy era, liberals we felt that what he was doing in harassing government employees was going to inhibit them in their jobs, and they were going to be afraid to say what they really thought about China and blah, blah. You see what I mean? So when these cables come out, for instance, and the question comes up, well, is this kind of distribution going to inhibit diplomats from doing their job? And the first panel this afternoon kind of came out on both sides of that. So I don't have an informed answer about it, but my point is that when we think about our right to have information from the government, and it's very, very important in a democracy, we also need to think about, is there some limiting policies here about enabling our public servants to do their job for us?
All right, we have just a little more than 5 minutes left, so I'm going to ask that you maybe keep your questions concise and the answer is relatively concise.
Yeah, my name is Harvey Rifkin, and what's your opinion about immunity for so-called leakers who reveal the sort of behavior of high-level government officials who engineer false flag events like 9/11 or Operation Northwoods?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Or like Operation Northwoods, which has been pretty
So I'm not sure I understand where the question is.
Yeah, basically the question is, should there be immunity for leakers who make public sordid behavior of high-level government officials who are involved in engineering false flag events like 9/11 or Operation Northwoods?
What do you mean by falsified events? I'm not sure.
False
Covert
flag
operations that pretend to be foreign operations, which are really U.S.
I see.
But let me relate that to the last question for a minute. When you mention immunity, should there be immunity? The fact is there are no whistleblower protection apply to people in the national security apparatus, that apply to classified information. There are some procedures that are supposed to allow them to tell their inspector generals or to go to Congress in theory, but even that has considerable risks for them professionally. Their names will be known to their agencies usually, and they will be punished for it usually. But there's no official immunity for it. On the other hand, there is in fact no official secrets act of the British sort which criminalizes any and all release of classified information. You're talking about a particularly important kind for the public to know, but even less than that. There is no official secrets act as there is in Britain. Now, I think we can agree here, we have agreed there are secrets that deserve protection, justifiably protected. There are 3 narrow criminal laws that I've already mentioned: nuclear weapons, communications intelligence, and the identities of clandestine agents. Only. Those are the only laws that are directly criminalize particular kinds of information. But we can agree that there are other, I think we would agree, that there are other kinds of information that should be protected, or can be protected: diplomacy during negotiations, military operations, the Normandy landing date, and stuff like that is properly protected. There is, however, no law. The question is, do we need a criminal law criminalizing any and all classified information, which 793 seems to do if it's constitutional? Should that be constitutional? Do we need a law like that? I'd say, first of all, absolutely not. We need a lot more of that information out. The kind you're talking about is information that should be put out even if it were against the law, and even if you weren't immune for doing it. There doesn't have to be immunity. Somebody who understands something like that, I think, should consider doing it even at great personal cost, which is the choice I faced. But the fact is that, as Lowell was saying earlier when he mentioned the tobacco companies, they don't have a criminal law that forbids. They had a civil contract of non-disclosure for confidentiality with Jeffrey Whitehead. They could sue him for that in civil court. They couldn't put him in prison for putting out what he did.
But actually, you could get an injunction for that.
They did, it's like for professional
proprietary information.
Damage.
And by the way, everyone at CBS News has the same agreement.
Yeah, still okay, CBS, exactly. Unions, corporations in general, not only the mafia, but everywhere you turn. The fact is that secrets are kept all too well by British Petroleum, as I said, by Fukushima in Japan, not only in America, by the tobacco companies above all, who managed to keep secrets for more than half a century. The truth that Merrill Williams revealed and Jeffrey Whitehead revealed, that they knew that their product was carcinogenic, addictive, and that they were selling it to minors. They swore the opposite in front of Congress, and these documents prove it now. What I'm saying is, you don't apparently need criminal laws in order to keep secrets all too well. And the question is, do we want to add to all the corporate and administrative sanctions for telling secrets, ostracism, loss of clearance, loss of job, Jeffrey Whitehead reduced to teaching high school science classes, right, from having been a vice president. Do we need to add to those criminal prosecution? And finally, as Lowell was saying, we're in the prospect of getting such a law. Likely, it's actually likely right now. We don't have it, but we're likely to get it in the effect of one of 2 routes. First of all, I said there were 3 prior prosecutions for leaks under 793, the Espionage Act. Obama has brought 5, almost twice as many as all previous presidents.
Okay, let's try to get one more question and then we're really getting the high side of time. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Kyle, and as a college student, I'm wondering what your advice would be to sort of get more involved in sort of actions that I can take to further, say, maybe it's exposing secrets, maybe it's just sort of fighting for the cause. I'm sort of interested in other things that I
To
can
get involved and help fight the cause. Well, you can become a journalist, I guess.
Well, you might become a journalist. I just want to make sure, just for informational purposes, we haven't mentioned that there is a section of the Espionage Act that was inspired by Colonel McCormick, the owner of the Tribune in Chicago in 1942, when he published on the front page of his newspaper the fact that we had cracked the Japanese codes, secret codes, which the Japanese didn't know. The government, Franklin Roosevelt wanted to prosecute him. They waited, they didn't do it. They passed an amendment to the Espionage Act in 1950, which is the Communications related amendment. And the reason you should keep an eye on that is that's likely where we will see a prosecution that is pushed by the government related to journalists. Some of that was contemplated in the New York Times stories about the NSA shopping program, and also because the New York Times published the SWIFT system of financial clearances, which are done through a computer system in New Jersey internationally, which is being monitored. So getting into those areas is really one of the sensitive areas right now.
See, that's where the Bush administration threatened to prosecute, but did not do it. Now, there's a case where the New York Times, revealing the NSA, Communications Intelligence stuff, was clearly violating the letter and spirit of US 798 in this case.
So they don't bring prosecutions that they know they're going to lose and that are going to backfire.
Yeah, why would they lose it? The question would be because that law, although as I say, generally it's quite reasonable to protect communications intelligence, in this case, you would be testing before a jury the question, can you send someone to prison for revealing information of clear-cut illegality?
Well, there is a current grand jury investigation of James Rising, a reporter of the New York Times, related to the book, not to the articles. The Times is not a potential defendant, against him for revelations made in that book.
Yeah, but not on the computer.
All right, any quick advice? Just waiting for an answer. Very patient.
Don't do it unless you're willing to go to jail.
What can you do short of breaking the law? What do you study?
I'm studying computer science.
The chance, except under Obama, of breaking the law has been very, very low. One person was convicted by a jury. Samuel Roy Morrison went to jail. 2 people have pled guilty. So the chance of going to jail for leaking, if you see how many leaks there are every week, is really very low. What you could do, is any citizen could do, you're asking about one person, but any citizen, is to try to head off the pressure in the Obama administration and in Congress right now to change the status where it does become clearly against the law. As I say, I really do object to the notion of, don't break the law or do break the law. The point is now we do not have a clear-cut constitutional law that forbids this, but we may well get it. If one of these 5 prosecutions, one is a guilty plea, but one of the 4 ongoing prosecutions under Obama, and possibly another one Assange, proceeds and leads to a conviction, and which is pretty easy under the wording of the law. It goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, this Supreme Court, for the first time addresses that issue. It never has before, and upholds 793, which they're charged with breaking, as constitutional. Then we'll have an official secret act, and then we will have many fewer leaks. Now, to the extent that the public can be informed that this is a problem and discouraged from going that route, it's hard to affect the legal process. It's something, however, that would be easier to affect is that a number of senators and congressmen have resolutions, including Dianne Feinstein, which will in effect make laws for the first time, but laws that will in fact make it illegal, criminalized to present any classified information. Feinstein wants to deprive people of their pension if they are believed to have been the source of leaks on this. But others are proposing a direct official secrets act. Congress did pass such an act in November of 2000. Almost no journalist that I've met is aware of that. A few are, I imagine a few are, but not very many. And Clinton vetoed it. I believe Obama would not veto such a law. He should be told that he should veto it for the same reasons that Clinton did. Clinton was right. He referred, by the way, to the opinions in the Pentagon Papers case, Justice Stewart. But he just said our democracy is not compatible with such a restraint. I think Clinton was absolutely right on that. And there is very much a political question that applies to all of us. We really should not allow this Congress and this President to sign a law which will make it even harder for us to get the truth about what our government is doing.
All right. And on that note,